call this meeting to order. Can I please have a roll call?
Goss.
Present.
Harper.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Tinsley.
Present.
Cruz. Anderson. Hartke.
Here. There is a quorum present. Can I have a motion on the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Mr. Tinsley and moved by Mr. Rosales. Any questions or additions or changes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda passes. I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th, 2017, which are included in our packet.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. A second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rosales. Any questions, changes, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that will pass. Move on to public participation. I see no public. Move ahead then to member communications. Do I have any communications from members? I do not see any, so we will move on ahead. Facilities Director's Report. Dana, this is yours.
All right. Thank you. First up, I want to talk just a little bit, give you an update on the, we talked in February about the nursing home hot water heater problem for kitchen and laundry. If you'll remember, the Sunday before our February meeting, the larger of the Lochinvar boilers went down that supplied hot water for laundry and kitchen. Our staff was called in on Sunday. Davis Hauk, contractor, was called in. They spent most of the day looking at it. Davis Hauk ended up telling the nursing home that it was the heat exchanger. Nursing home gave him permission to move forward. I learned about it on Monday and tried to put the brakes on. Came to you on Tuesday, which was the February meeting, and actually presented to you about paying for in our capital asset projects a new boiler, water heater for the nursing home. Learned Wednesday morning that unfortunately Davis Hauk was given permission. They went ahead because of the IDPH requirements of hot water for laundry and kitchen. The nursing home went ahead and authorized them to move forward. They put in the order. It was being shipped when I talked to them Wednesday morning, arriving on Thursday, and there was a restocking fee of well over 50% of the cost of the installation. So we let the nursing home go ahead and install. It's not what we would have done. We would have rather have purchased a new one, since this was her third heat exchanging unit to be placed in. The physical plant took care of the second unit over there, a much less expensive unit, and has paid for that to be worked on, and both are up and working. That next Thursday, after our February meeting, the water heater replacement, the heat exchanger came in, and they were up and working by the end of Thursday of that day, so they were compliant with IDPH. Which brings us to, we included that on our capital fund for 2017. That page actually is attached if you take a look at it in the information I gave you. I have also attached at the bottom number 8, which was brought up by Mr. Tinsley, to be included. We were to research the purchase of a soft water softener system for the laundry and the kitchen. We do have more funds available for that now, since we're not having to pay for a brand new hot water heater or boiler for them. And we've reached out to another engineering firm here in town, ECS, gentleman who owns it and operates it, used to be with Henneman. Wayne Robinson is a terrific engineer, and we'll work with him in putting together basically a quick study to evaluate various systems that would work hand in hand with our hot water providers at the nursing home. He'll develop costs analysis of various systems, as well as the annual cost for installing that would work in combination with both hot water heaters. And we'll update you as we move forward and put together that study. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Back to the emergency situation with the hot water heater. I do understand the rules of the road of IDPH. However, do we have any procedure in place so when such an emergency comes up that you get into the loop of the decision-making? And if we don't, how do we go about establishing that?
We're going to sit down and have a conversation, although I know that Rick's had several conversations with management over there. So, but I will sit down with Karen to have a kind of a wrap-up of that, to make sure that they understand our position, representing the county and our interests with that building. They're paying for it. They understand that. They felt they needed to move forward with it and expedite that decision quickly. I just wish we were at the table and part of the discussion. Again, it would have been my recommendation to spend a little bit more money, but to go with a brand-new unit versus one that you're replacing a critical element and the most basically, that's the guts of the unit, is that heat exchanger, and I just think it would have been better to replace the entire unit versus putting in a third one. So it's kind of a done deal once we were informed that the cost to restock was exorbitant.
I understand all that. I'm just looking ahead.
Yep. Any other questions?
Dana, you said they're paying for it. What do you mean by that?
Well, the nursing home, I'm not sure. All I can tell you is I'm not responsible for their finances, but they received or have received the bill from Davis Houck, so they are responsible for covering the cost of not only the Sunday call, where Davis Houck was there for about 5.5 hours, and was about $1,200 bill on a Sunday, overtime, obviously, but for the installation of the heat exchanger, as well as the $12,000 cost of the heat exchanger. So it's not coming to the county or the physical plant. Does that mean they can pay for it?
Well, not directly, okay.
No other questions? We'll move on. Update on the coroner's office election storage physical plant generator project. That's ITB 2017-03. We worked with the GHR on the next 3 projects and have done studies. They've been involved with various aspects of these projects or buildings for the last 1.5 years. So we did go ahead and structure agreements with the GHR. They're attached. These are the proposed schedules. All 3 projects, and we'll get into them individually, but are going to be developed and going on at the same time. It does not utilize the same staff from GHR. However, it does certainly utilize the county staff, myself, or my assistant Chris. The biggest portion, obviously, is in the development of the specifications, which, we'll see various updates throughout the next 2 months as the process moves forward. But our plan is March and April to put together the specs and actually draft the bid document. And the May 2nd facilities meeting, we'll present it to this group for approval. Finalize any changes that come about on that meeting or that we see with the next day, and then get the bid posted to the public on May 4th. May 18th, we'll conduct here in this room a pre-bid meeting. We'll invite and we'll be contacting potential contractors. We do try and recruit particularly the local folks and folks in Decatur, Danville that are nearby, Springfield, et cetera. Try and get more interest. The more interest, I think, the more competitive our bids are. So we'll continue to do that for all of these projects as we have in the past. So the meeting will be the 18th. Deadline for submission of questions, clarifications, the 30th of May. GHR will have until May 31 to get out that information. And then May 2nd, the bid opening will happen here. We'll present to the Facilities Committee on June 2nd, then to the full board on the 23rd of June. If and should it be approved, we'll attempt to sign contract on the 24th. We will have a draft ready to go, should it be approved on the 23rd, as we have in the past, to try and expedite. We really want to try and get this project going. There's some lead time in ordering some of this equipment. We know that, so we've tried to build that into our schedule. Get the contractor mobilized, hopefully the first part of August. Substantial completion by the end of September, with final completion and final punch list completed by October 10th. Should not be much of an inconvenience for any of the occupants of these three facilities. The main electrical box comes into the physical plant, so it's us. And they really will not be disrupted for their business at all during the installation phase of that project. Attached, you can see the agreement we have with GHR. 10% is pretty solid and consistent. It's a not to exceed number. If it costs them more, they don't get billed more, or they don't bill more. So feel like it was a very good and fair price. Reimbursables up to $3,000. However, it's kind of been standard with a lot of the work that we've done with them over the years. We've not reached that, but it's certainly built in that should it be there, that they can get reimbursement to that number. Any questions about the generator project? Hearing none, we'll move on. ITB 2017-01, that's the nursing home chiller compressor replacement. This is the large chiller that supplies cold water for the air conditioning to the nursing home. It operates off of 4 very large compressors, and one has been down for 3 years. Nursing home has been unable to afford the project. I was concerned originally, it's why it's on our list. We've been operating for 3 years, kind of on borrowed time, similar to what issue we had with the boilers this past year. And I certainly don't want to see us get into a situation where in the middle of summer we go down. We've got another compressor that goes down, and we're in emergency mode trying to get a compressor in here, which are not sitting on generally anybody's shelf. And so it's a fairly, 30 to 60 day at least lead item. But the 3 compressors are working overtime. It's most efficient. We're burning also more utilities by not being able to spread the load to the 4th compressor. So that's why the project's on the capital asset project list. Schedule is very similar to the one we just laid out with the other project, the previous project. Again, look to try and get it kicked off in August. Again, when we're dealing with that, it's toward the end of the summer. Finishing up by September 26th, punch lists, total project completed by October 10. We will again go out and actively call on a number of contractors to hopefully gain their attention to get them involved with the project. GHR's agreement is attached, you can look at. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dana, where is that on your capital sheet here? Is it not on here? Was it?
Yeah, it's, I think I gotta look that back up. I think we're billing them. I think what Tammy told me, and I'll double check, then I'll communicate to the committee, but I believe that we're billing them for the cost of replacing the compressor, so we don't get caught short, so.
Okay.
I will double check that, but I think that's why that's not there.
Okay, thanks.
It's a good catch, though. Okay, and the third project up is the Brookins 2 multi-zone RTU replacement projects. That's the 2 rooftop units on this building. We have 2 upstairs. We also have 2 down in the basement. The basement are not being replaced. It's just the rooftop units are in horrible condition for this building. Similar project scope and schedule in terms of what's laid out there. And again, the GHR contract agreement is attached. This is the largest of the 3 projects in terms of estimated cost. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Dana, the current unit up there is 48 years old. The current Nesbit unit up there is 48 years old.
Yes, it's original. We
How
got our
long did-
mileage out of it.
How long do they normally last? What's the expected?
Yeah, 25 years is a pretty good time.
So we've gotten our money's worth, but.
Yeah,
Did we run across additional costs maintaining that this long?
yes, you do because of the amount of time that we spend up there on it. It's, during the summer when it's in peak use, our guys are up there probably at least once a week, tweaking it, nursing it along. There have been times when we couldn't find a replacement part, and they've got on the phone and called all over the place and found an old unit someplace and got a part in. So I mean, frankly, it's kind of a joke.
Just one more.
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to reconcile here. You have 277 on GHR and 274 basically on your list. Mm-hmm. I assume the GHR is kind of the number you're running with.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
The last item is not a new item, but Dobbins Downs. If you'll remember, or you may not remember, but in a number of years ago, this property, 2603 Campbell Drive in Champaign, was a duplex, had a fire. I think the owner maybe skipped, didn't do anything, took insurance money possibly. I don't have that information. But the county took over the property and paid to have the building torn down to make it a little bit safer and reduce the liability from certainly into the neighborhood or for the county. And in 2010, a neighborhood group was put together, came to the county and asked them to consider leasing the property or renting the property to them so that they could create a playground. Document was created. They paid $50 a year of rent. They were supposed to take care of the insurance and mitigate the liability for the county. I think they paid the first year. A number of the folks who were on the committee left the area. No payments, no following payments were made to the county. They were also to take care of the playground equipment. That wasn't happening. And last spring, summer, John Hall was contacted, my office was contacted by some folks who live nearby as this being a unsafe area, unsightly, grass weeds were growing up. At night, it was an area where folks would hang out and cause disruption for the neighbors. Nothing good was happening. So they asked the county to go about disbanding it, doing away with the playground. County board put together a proclamation, I think, that asked the county administrator to look into getting rid of it, asked me to take care of the property in terms of make repairs, mow the grass, make it a little more sightly. And then John Hall from Planning and Zoning was to place a fence around it until such time as we could determine what could be done and how it could be utilized. Rick has talked to a number of people about the property itself. Habitat was one group I know that he talked to. They did not have a current interest in the property, in the development of the property, maybe down the road. I've talked to the park districts here in Champaign County. No one had any interest in the equipment, which was 5, 6 years old. Folks who would like to use that equipment would rather have new equipment. I talked with the Head Start here in our building for Champaign County, and they felt the same way, that they would really prefer brand-new equipment. So since basically December, I've been trying to figure out how we can take the equipment out. Don't have the expertise or the equipment to remove the equipment and remove the foundations. So I did get pricing from Diggett of Champaign, which is attached behind the pictures. It's for $4,900. John Hall from Planning and Zoning will pay for this work to be done, and we'll continue to mow it and take care of it at such time that the county finally is able to sell off the property, allow Habitat some agreement or some other entity to take over the property in some manner.
Go ahead, James.
Outside of all the issues pertaining to the actual property, were children still playing on this playground before it was fenced?
Before the fence, I believe that children were playing on it. I know I've been out there a dozen times prior to the fence going up, and kids were playing on it. But it's also some folks that were causing problems in the neighborhood were also out there late in the evenings. It is within the city of Champaign. It's not a county sheriff responsibility. But the neighborhood is really active and wants it gone.
I'm just thinking, like, maybe there's some way we could, I don't know, somehow we can maybe reach out to the community and see if, you know, they'll be willing to make, I guess, one last effort in preserving it. I mean, you said it was, what, $50 a year for the rent? I mean, outside of...
Yeah, I think the rent is,
Yeah, that's
yeah, I
not
mean,
an
that's
issue.
nothing. That's not the issue. The biggest issue
Was
on
the
several
maintenance.
fronts, you know, maintaining the equipment, making sure that it's safe, making sure that it doesn't have graffiti on it, which it does quite often. We've gone out a couple of times. Champaign Park District went out and helped remove it at least once, if not twice. My staff's been out on several occasions. And then the liability factor is for the county, liability that someone may get hurt and sue the county for having this out there. You know, those are the big issues that there was a proposition. I did not include it in the packet, but I've got it. There's a resolution that the county board moved on October 2nd. Excuse me, that's not the date. July 27th, I believe they put through and basically authorized the the county manager to move on the property and to, you know, disband it, tear it down, make it safe.
Dana, this is a county-owned residential lot within the city limits of Champaign, is that correct?
That is correct.
Have we looked at putting it on the market for sale? I mean, especially after we clean it up, perhaps to see if there is someone who just wants to purchase it as a lot to take it off our hands. I mean, in some ways, it feels like we are county running a park district there and one tiny little park. And if the Champaign Park District doesn't want to take responsibility for it, I mean,
We did, that was the other thing I guess I skipped over in the conversation. I know that Rick and I believe had a conversation with the Champaign Park District executive. And, yeah, that was a question that we brought up to see if they would be interested in taking it on as a Champaign Park and leaving it for the kids and taking care of it. And they did not have an interest either, which, I mean, I really feel like we went way over our due diligence in trying to keep it as a park, or at least allow someone to utilize the equipment in some manner that kids could use within our community. And so far, we've just not found anything, so. Rick?
The general trend has been away from these neighborhood small parks. They find that, the maintenance costs and other issues related to the upkeep are just not worth the hassles that are involved. So you see a lot of communities investing in larger facilities that can be used by more people. They can make them accessible. So that's the way I think cities have been going. But the city of Champaign has been working with us they did do some maintenance there, but I think that we reached the end as far as their interest in continuing the park, so.
I'm just saying, like, when you look at it, like, kind of geographically speaking, like, Dobbins Downs is kind of isolated from the rest of the city, and, like, this is just their one, if you exclude this away from the community, like, I understand there are, like, a lot of other facilities that are quote accessible, but I don't see everybody being able to get to those facilities from this community. I mean, like, I understand, like, like you said, you've done your due diligence on trying to preserve it the best way you can, but I don't know. I guess I'm just speaking from emotion. It's kind of just sad. That's all.
I have a question. I could speak a little bit about it because I was here during the time that the county went ahead and approved it. There was a lot of discussion as to responsibility, and I believe the neighborhood association was assuming a lot of the cleanup, and they were really, really pushing this board to provide something for that area. And I believe they got a $30,000 grant for the equipment, and we were all excited about it, because in that area, there's no play lots for the kids. But I think the association sort of dispersed, and then the responsibility and onus fell on the county, and then nobody wanted to assume liability. And then the neighbors started complaining about, the youth and teenagers sort of hanging out in the evening and creating some ruckus there. But right now, there's nobody that wants to assume any liability or responsibility. And it's unfortunate because it hasn't been there for a very long time. And the equipment is relatively fairly good. But at this point, I think that there's no other recourse but to dismantle it because we don't want anybody getting hurt on it. But it's just a shame. If there's another association within the community that is willing to take responsibility and liability and keep up with it, I believe that this board is willing to move forward on leaving it the way it is. But is that onus? The city of Champaign didn't want that onus, and I don't think that we want to be able to carry that. They've torn up the fences. There's now accessibility in and out, and we're still liable for that. We've offered it to Habitat. I was on the Habitat board, and Habitat didn't want it because they have a lot of new builds that are in the works, and about using the empty lot to build new Habitat homes, and they were not interested at this time. But I do believe that the key factor here was the association, that it was a community that says we want to keep this together, we will maintain it, please let us have it. And, and $50, it was just like giving $1 on an annual basis to, go ahead and maintenance so that they could show some kind of commitment. So if you could talk with some of those people, maybe. But I think it's been quite a while now since it's been sort of semi-abandoned. How long has it been fenced in?
Since the board meeting in July,
Okay, so,
of which about half the fence has been stolen. It's 8-foot sections, and, so it's a commodity, and people use it. We were out there, and about half it's gone, so
Yeah.
it's not much of a fence right now.
Any other questions, Jack?
Thank you. Dana, dig it when they go out there, they're just going to simply pull it up and get rid of it, scrap what they can?
Actually, when I talked to him, the equipment is, there's some specialized nuts and bolts that are used. I think his intentions are to carefully take it apart, and he's a businessman, and he will try and
Try to recycle it.
try and put it someplace or sell it to someone. There's obviously some issues with that. We've got one of the cars that is on a spring, that the spring can be re-welded, or a new spring can be purchased, but we'll give that to them. But, I mean, that's typically when somebody comes in to, tear down, they get the spoils, so to speak. They can, recycle whatever they find off of it, so. He will also, besides the play equipment, there's the large plastic, it's about a foot high, that tries to keep the wood chips, corralled around the play equipment, and then with all of the foundations of the play equipment, there's a lot of cement there that needs to be pulled, and he will be pulling that. He'll refill with dirt, and he'll put seed down.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Rantoul's Park District has some parks that have like equipment, but is 3 decades old and in disrepair, but I don't even think they have the funds to come out and recover it. How long before Diggett would move on this? I assume
He
would
and I are
take-
going to talk tomorrow, so I'll find out what his schedule is. I'll give you a call.
That'd be fine. I can present it to the Park District and see if they have any interest. And I recognize this would change his bid if he was, I don't know if they'd come over and pull it out, or, they could contract with him to pull it out for them.
I mean,
That's another story. We can get into that. We won't talk about that, but.
Yeah, we can talk about
Just let me
that after I find out when. And, if we want to hold them up, we can obviously hold them up a little bit, but
Well,
we need to move on it
I can
quickly.
let the Park District know immediately, so I'll talk to you when you call.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions on Patsy, please?
I'd just like to reinforce the scenario that Geraldo laid out about the situation there. I too was on the board, and there was an association, but there was one woman who was the driver behind the whole scene. And I think Dana's already informed us they moved out of the area. And when they moved out of the area, unfortunately, when there's just one person driving a situation, when that person leaves, it tends to fall apart. And nobody else has stepped up, so.
Questions on Dobbins Downs? We talk about Dobbins a lot in this group. All right, we'll move on to other business. Under there, we have a semi-annual review of closed session minutes, and according to the state's attorney, we have none that will be opening, so we can move forward. Chair's report, just want to reiterate that we did a tour of the downtown jail this afternoon. A few people were there. Thank you for those who showed, understood if you couldn't make it. Our future meeting of this committee will be Monday, is that correct, Monday, April 3rd?
Yes.
Oh, yes, because of Election Day.
Days on Tuesday.
Yes, thank you. Please remind yourselves that that is Monday, April 3rd, because Tuesday is Election Day. And we will be touring ILEAS, which is always an interesting tour, beginning at 5:15. No items to put on the consent agenda, and unless anybody has anything else to add tonight, we will declare ourselves in adjournment. Thank you all.